Violins have endured, and string music has endured a lot longer than band instruments, And I think what's beautiful about them, not only there's a moment of history there that you have to think about, you have to put yourself back in time. You have to put yourself back, in the 1700s.
These violins are desirable because of the warmth of sound, the variety of sound you can make, and I like to believe there's something in the history that makes people very interested in playing these.
When people say, I have a Stradivarius that I want you to play, you always want to step back a little bit and say, that's great, but... And I really thought they'd probably find somebody from Oklahoma City or Norman, somebody hipper, slicker, brighter, better. He was so open and forthright with them. Here, I have this Guarneri and this Stradivarius. Why don't you play them? The fact that the man, apparently he's shared those violins with, hundreds and hundreds of people over the years, is a beautiful thing that he can do to give somebody like the amateur or the, non-professional, professional violinist an opportunity to play on them.
We've been fortunate enough to acquire two famous instruments. One is a Stradivari violin made in 1714 in Cremona, Italy, that makes it 304 years old. And the other is a Giuseppe Guarneri del Gesù violin made in the same town in 1742. So that violin is only 275 years old.
The sound, I thought, gosh, it can't be that much different. It can't be that special, And it took a little bit of time for me to relax, and be able to start to make music with the instruments. And they were different. There was definitely a difference in the instruments.
All professional violinists, soloists, collectors would dream of playing a violin that's made by Stradivari or Guarneri. And now we're here with two of them in the same case going to be played on the stage here. And that's an unusual situation.
And there was a moment when I was playing the instrument in practice and we were rehearsing with the Sloans. All of a sudden I just relaxed. I was playing Ashoka Farewell by Jay Unger, and I got this emotion inside of me that came up through me and went into the instrument, and I was doing a vibrato on a note, and all of a sudden it was as if two notes came out of the violin. I mean, I had never heard anything like that. And they were unison notes, and it was so amazing, the sound. I can't even really describe it except that it almost had a halo over the notes, and it was a double sound, but of a unison nature. And Judy, Mrs. Sloan, noticed it. She knew because I had a physical reaction to it. It surprised me so much. She said, "You found it, didn't you?" And I said, "Found what?" And she said, "You found the sound of the instrument, of the Stradivarius." And after that, I could tap into it a lot more quickly. I knew what to look for. I knew the pressure, I knew the sound points, I knew the amount of bow speed I needed to play the instrument the way I wanted to. And it was amazing.
Stradivari lived to be 93 years old. He made violins even 4 in his 93rd year. So there are 644 violins that are documented, still surviving from his workshop. About 60 cellos and 10 violas. So that means there are more than 650 instruments in the world by Stradivari. Now, many are in museums, permanent collections, like the Library of Congress, the Paris Conservatory, the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, England, and cannot be removed and cannot be played.
It rang out, it sang. I'd say the instrument had a voice that it was singing. It was much clearer, much more beautiful. It's almost like when you listen to an opera singer, a really well-trained opera singer, and you listen to their voice and you think, wow, that is really gorgeous. I can't believe it's so pure. And it was that way. It had a pure voice.
Cremona, Italy is a town that's about an hour's drive southeast of Milan. So it was an agrarian area. But somehow the violin makers settled there, and these violins were made there with special wood. The wood on the back is from Bosnian maple. Wood on the front is northern Italian spruce. That wood seems to have a special quality of sound combined with the genius of the makers. The wood now is close to 300 years old, so it tends to sound different from a new violin. New violins are very good today, but they haven't had the time to ripen. The old workshops are gone, but Cremona is the home of about 140 famous violin makers who are constantly making new violins there under the influence of the old makers.
Stradivarius used particular wood that was very, very dense and very thick, which gave it better resonance. And the violin itself is a vibrating body. It's something that's built for vibration and sound, and somehow he got it right.
In about 1981, we got a call from a dealer in Chicago who I had known before. Would you like to buy a Stradivari violin? I knew this was a lot of money, but my wife talked me into getting in the car, and we drove to Chicago.
While I was playing those instruments, these beautiful old 300-year-old instruments, in my lifetime, I wouldn't have ever had the chance to play a Stradivarius. I wouldn't. Afterwards, I had this experience and getting into the sound of the instrument. My teachings changed. My whole viewpoints for music has changed. Now I have more of a sense of urgency. I have to teach something, to get students to a level to where they can understand different things about making music, about playing music. It enriched my whole life.
It's on page 48.
A good violin teacher will tell you that playing the violin is an athletic event, like running, playing basketball. If you don't constantly keep the muscles working, you won't have any success. So even when I'm tired, I try to come home and play at least a half hour every night. It may not be a serious piece. It may be just exercises like pianists do, scales, but just to keep the music flowing. And of course, it's enjoyable.
So you can imagine people playing the music of Mozart, Haydn, Bach, 18th century music on those instruments. Beethoven was in the 19th century, so, later they played that century's music on it. You just get a sense of history that is so beautiful and unique. I was playing in a downtown church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, very beautiful Gothic architecture, sitting there thinking, how many hundreds of years have musicians been playing the Messiah in a church like this? 300, 400 years, pretty amazing. Handel wrote that music back in the 1700s. Wow. It was a neat sense of history.
Wow, this is beautiful.
I think so. That sounds good.
So I will wonder you the second time,
harmony,
and the third time.
Yeah,
And then
yeah, it
it
sounds
has-
so
versatile.
It's written 3 times in a row there.
Sudden, I'm thinking now there. Suzanne got the Strad on the Strad.
She has the Pajot bow that Roberto Conti loves.
I'm sure, okay.
Now, the violins we have always been in professional or amateur collections. They've been played for years. And so these violins, like any other piece of wood, that's used in performance will have injuries. They've been corrected. You can't see any injuries, but they've all been what they say, restored. They are equipment for performing, but they've been then shuttled over to the works of art because they're in museums and they're in collections and so on. That makes them worth more money than they should be. The rarity is causing the increase in the values, like Picasso paintings.
East Central did a great job of promoting the event, and I will say it was very special. It surprised me because they had 800 people at this event. They really were coming to hear a Stradivarius violin because, I mean, when are you going to be able to hear a Stradivarius in Ada, Oklahoma? And they came to hear those violins being played, you know, to hear them on stage. And people told me that afterwards. There's a mystique, there was a mystery there that they wanted to understand better.
Wow.